Today, I'm going to be setting up this bad boy. This is the Synology DS3622XS Plus disk station, which is a massive enterprise-grade storage device that's going to allow me to store up to 100 to 200 terabytes, depending on how I set this up. Let's jump right into this. Now, all of our audience knows that Fstoppers is a photography and video channel, and we create a ton of content. Now, when everybody is in the office here, we have tons of different workstations, all pulling files off of the same NAS box, and we're using those to edit photos in Photoshop, go through catalog images on Lightroom, edit videos in Premiere, send projects to our clients, and of course, upload videos like this to our YouTube channel. With all of this data having to be pulled from a couple NAS boxes, we have outfitted this entire studio with 10 gigabit Ethernet. And while this 10 gigabit network might be a little overkill for everybody else out there, for us, when everybody is editing and doing all these crazy things, it allows all of our computers to be nice and snappy and everyone to be able to get their projects done without any lag whatsoever. Now, as you can imagine, the Synology devices that we've upgraded to are enterprise solutions, which often have single or even double 10 gigabit connections built directly into the unit. They also have multiple connections so that you can bond all of these into one bonded connection, which gives a little bit more redundancy and reliability. And they have a lot of other really advanced features that most photographers probably don't actually need. If you're a smaller photography studio and you're just yourself, perhaps, you definitely don't need anything this crazy, so you can get the Synology drives that have like 2 to 6 drives built in. It's going to give you terabytes and terabytes of storage, and of course, depending on how you set up the RAID, it's going to give you redundancy so that if any one of these drives fails, maybe even 2 at the same time, you'll have plenty of time to replace those drives and not lose any of your data. Now, these are the systems that Lee and I both have in our offices down in Puerto Rico, where we live permanently. And since we do travel quite a bit, I really appreciate the Synology Disk Station Manager because it allows me to remotely access any of these NAS boxes that we have spread all over the country and pull files as I need them. I can update files and put them onto my server in Puerto Rico. I can get files from Puerto Rico and bring them back here to the States. And it just is super easy. And for somebody like me who's a little technologically challenged, I can really appreciate this because Synology has made this incredibly easy to set up and operate. Now, here in this studio, we have 2 Synology NAS systems already. One has the expansion set on it, so it's got a few extra drives, but both of those systems have reached about 90% capacity. So today, I'm going to be setting up this massive system here that's got 12 drives, which is going to give us the most amount of storage that we've ever had here in the studio. Now, the first thing that I need to do to get this up and running is I need to seat every one of these hard drives into each of these little bays. I've already mounted them. It's really easy. They just kind of snap into place and everything can be removed without any tools whatsoever. So that's extremely convenient. And then just using these little plastic snaps, you just pop these in. Everything lines up with the hard drive mounting system, and there you go. Once you have these mounted, we're just going to pop these in like this, push them in, and then they snap into place. They also have this cool little thing where you can lock these in if you're worried about them accidentally getting pulled out. It does come with a key that I have somewhere, and you can just lock that into place. Now, recently, Synology released their Plus series hard drives, which we are going to be installing into this NAS box today. Now, for an enterprise system like this, the much larger system, Synology recommends that we use the Plus series drives because once these are installed and in place, they can actually remotely go in and update the firmware on the hard drives. Now, I didn't really know that hard drives had firmware, but by updating the firmware every now and then, Synology guarantees that this will be the most reliable system that you could possibly have, and you don't have to take the drives out to do this. It can do it straight from the NAS box, which is super convenient. Now, if you buy one of their more basic units that's not this huge enterprise system, you can still buy your own hard drives and install them into the system, and they're going to work. You just need to make sure that they're compatible hard drives with the NAS box that you buy. But since hard drives are released at such different times, and if you're like me, you go to Amazon, you try to buy them as cheap as possible, many times you can come up with problems where one hard drive has a different firmware, and all of a sudden you get them all installed, and 1 or 2 of them don't actually show up. And nothing is worse than buying thousands of dollars worth of hard drives, only to find out that 1 or 2 of them or all of them are not quite compatible. And then guess what? You can't return them, and now you're having to find another device to use a hard drive with. So for me, the peace of mind of just knowing that Synology is going to take care of these drives if anything does happen, you can update the firmware directly from the NAS box, and that these are all guaranteed to work, I've just decided to pay just a little bit extra to get the Plus series to install into this. Now I do have 12 16 terabyte drives, which depending on how I set up the RAID, is going to give me about 80 to 160 terabytes of data. So we'll deal with that here in a minute when I plug this all in and start dealing with the software, but tons of storage and lots of redundancy depending on how I set this up. So let me go ahead and get all of these drives back installed. Now before I plug this bad boy in, whoo, this thing is heavy. Let me just show you some of the other features that you have on the back here. Of course, you have fans to keep everything nice and cool, and these fans do run a little quieter than some of the larger enterprise units that you can buy. It does have a PCI Express slot, so if you needed to add something, you can definitely upgrade this model here. Luckily, they have 3 1 gigabit connections, but more importantly for me, they have 2 10 gigabit connections. So I don't have to add anything to the PCI slot to give me that 10 gigabit connectivity. I'm just gonna be plugging in 2 Ethernet cables and then probably bonding them together for one single 20 gigabit connection that will allow everyone in this office to be able to pull off data as fast as possible without interrupting the bandwidth when we're doing larger projects. This unit also has 2 SAS connectors, which allow me to connect multiple expansion packs to this. So if I need more drives down the road, instead of connecting them separately through my network, I can plug them in right here and have this all be recognized as one large unit. And they also have a couple of USB 3.2 connections, so if you need to plug anything in there. So basically everything is kind of out of the box. We're not really upgrading anything because everything I need is built into this. Now the one upgrade that we are going to do to this unit is we're going to be adding more RAM. 48 gigs worth of RAM, which might be completely overkill even for us, but since we have so many computers connecting to this and editing videos and doing big photo shoots and going through Lightroom catalogs and stuff all at once, having the 48 gigs is going to make this a lot snappier so that everybody pulling off files and doing video projects or photo catalogs in Lightroom, they're not going to notice any lag in their connection and everything's going to run nice and quick. Now, if you're a photographer and you're just running your own little business and you're connecting one computer, maybe even 2 computers to your NAS, 4 to 8 gigs is probably plenty. With these enterprise solutions, Synology does recommend having 16 gigs, but we're gonna go all the way up to 48 and hopefully never have to deal with that upgrade ever again. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this all plugged in with the 10 gigabit connection, get this powered up, and start working on the computer side of things so that we can get this initializing so that it's one solid drive and we can start using that here in our studio. Now, before we move over to the computer, let me just explain why I think every photographer and videographer needs to have a 10 gigabit connection between their NAS and their computer. Most of us are familiar with a Cat 5 or 6 or 7 cable like this, and typically in most home applications, this is running 1 gigabit a second. It's fine for your internet, but when you have to start streaming HD TV, or if you want to start editing 4K video, or pulling large amounts of files across your NAS and editing them in real time, this is just not going to be fast enough. And so we can use the same cable and get much faster speeds, but we need to run a 10 gigabit network in order to do that. So the first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need the 10 gigabit connection on your NAS box. And like I said earlier, this does have 2 10 gigabit ports built in. A lot of the Synology boxes, you can upgrade that with a PCI Express card that you put in there, and that will give you 10 gigabits. But having just 10 gigabits on your NAS box is not enough. The second thing that you might want that isn't totally necessary is you might want a switch for your home networking that has 10 gigabit as well. That way you can plug multiple computers in, and then no matter which computer you're plugged into on your office, as long as it's plugged into that 10 gigabit switch, you're gonna have 10 gigabit from the NAS to the switch and then to your computer. If this is overkill for you and you don't actually need a whole network, you can actually plug your NAS directly into your computer and just have a single point connection, which leads me to the third thing that you're going to need, and that is you're going to need a 10 gigabit connection at the computer itself. If you have a PC like a desktop tower, you can easily expand a 10 gigabit port in the back, and that's going to give you the fastest connection. If you're on a laptop or some other kind of computer that doesn't have the ability to expand those ports, you're going to have to get one of these USB to Ethernet adapters, and these for 10 gigabit can be extremely expensive. They also sell some that are 2.5 gigabits, which is 1/4 of the speed, but it's also going to be 2.5 times faster than the regular 1 gigabit connection. So to summarize, you're definitely going to need a 10 gigabit connection on your NAS box. You're going to potentially need a 10 gigabit connection on your switch for your home server. And then finally, you're going to need some kind of Ethernet connection at your computer that's going to allow for something faster than 1 gigabit, like a 2.5 or 10 gigabit connector. And again, the only reason that you need 10 gigabits is if you want to do active live editing from your NAS box and not have to transfer those files over to your computer. If you just want to use your NAS box as a storage device and move everything over as you edit, then you could get away with 1 gigabit. But as a photographer, videographer, and content creator, I would highly recommend go ahead, make the investment, because once you go to 10 gigabit connections, you'll never ever go back. All right, so here we are at the computer. We need to first find the Synology box on our network. If we go up to finds.synology.com, it's going to search for our Synology box. I also use Synology Assistant, so if you have that downloaded, you could use that as well, but we're going to be using the browser instead. As you can see here, it's found our DS1621 Plus model. But then right below it, we have the DS3622XS Plus, which is the one that we're installing now. So it says not installed. So I'm going to highlight the one that I'm trying to install and hit connect. I'm going to agree to the terms. And it shows a nice little picture here. Let's go ahead and hit install. We want to go ahead and automatically download and install the latest Disk Station Manager. All data will be deleted, but there is nothing on this drive, so I understand. And now we are installing the Disk Manager. This is probably going to take a few minutes, so we'll just skip ahead. And now it's going to reboot in 10 minutes, so we'll wait a little bit longer. All right, so we have installed the operating system. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. I need to give it a device name. We're going to hit next. Let's go ahead and install important DSM updates. Hit next. Now I already have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and sign in, but I would definitely recommend making one if you don't. Now we can create a Quick Connect ID, which is going to allow us to log in remotely. I'm definitely going to do this. This is one feature that I love that Synology has made quick and easy, literally called Quick Connect ID. I'm going to go ahead and check all 3 of these, hit submit. I have actually never used Synology Drive Server or Synology Office, but I am going to go ahead and install this just so that it's done. We're going to hit next. So I'm going to download the Synology Secure Sign-In app, scan this QR code, and we can hit finish. All right, so now we need to create a storage pool and volume, and this is going to be what shows up on our computers so we can access all the files. So we're going to hit create now. Now I believe you could probably create multiple volumes and storage pools, but I'm just going to make one of these. Now I get to choose the RAID that I want to set up, and there are a lot of RAIDs. So I'm actually going to go over to Synology's RAID calculator. And I can click through these different RAIDs to see how much storage I'm going to get. RAID 1's only going to give me 14 terabytes, so it's just going to make every single drive a copy of itself. RAID 5 will give me 160 terabytes. RAID 6 is just a little bit less at 145. RAID 10 drops it all the way down to 87. So before you make this decision, you probably want to read a little bit about RAIDs. I already know going into this that I'm going to make this a RAID 6. So I'm going to go back to my browser, change this to RAID 6. And it tells me here that I need at least 4 drives, but I have all 12 of them installed. And then I'm going to get a drive tolerance of 2 so that 2 drives at any one time could fail. I could remove those 2 drives and then put 2 new ones in and still keep the RAID intact. Let's hit next. And then from here, we're just going to drag each one of these hard drives over to my storage pool. And it gives me the estimated capacity of 145 terabytes. Heck yeah. I want to use all of the storage, so I'm going to hit max to give me 148 terabytes. And I'm going to just name the storage the same thing as everything else. I'm going to be using the BTRFS filing system, so we can hit next there. And let's hit apply. All of the data will be erased. Are you sure you want to continue? Okay. Now, luckily, setting this up doesn't take that long because all of the drives are empty. I do know from experience that when you have a drive fail and you have to pull it out and put a new drive in, sometimes that can take a good 12, 24, 36. I've had it take a couple days to rebuild the pool, the storage pool. So just be aware of that if you do have a drive that fails. Up here at the top, it tells me it's optimizing in the background. So this is one of those things where, look, it says 16 days, 5 days. It's shrinking pretty quickly. I'm not sure exactly how long this is going to take to optimize, but this is that process that you have to do one time, and it does take longer the larger your RAID system is. So while I'm waiting on that to initialize, which might take days to do because it's so much data, I'm going to show you how I can mount this onto my PC computer here using Synology Assistant. I can find the new RAID here and then hit map drive. Remember my credentials. For this one, I'm going to make it drive S, reconnect it, login, next. And there we are. Here is my drive. It's still building, so I don't want to put any files on there, but now I can just simply go to my computer and find it right there and start putting everything on there. So as easy as it can be. So I definitely highly recommend the Synology system. I have been using it now for over 10 or 15 years now since they first kind of came out. And like I said, we have 2 in Puerto Rico, we have 2 here, and now we have a 3rd one here. So quite a few units, and they have really just come in handy. They're so easy to set up, and you can use them remotely, which is probably my favorite thing ever. So if I forget a file, I just make sure that I have the login URL. I can log in, get anything that I need, upload it, download it, and it makes it really easy, especially when you're working on the go or you need to get that one file that you don't have. Now I know everybody doesn't probably need the enterprise version that I just installed here, so if you want something a little more practical for your photography business, go to the link in the description below. I have a few different models that are probably the most likely ones that you would be using, and of course I have a link to this DS3622 model that we have used, and definitely get one of these if you don't have one. And one other thing I do want to mention that I'm not covering in this video is this is a great system to provide backup to all of your files in case a drive or 2 fails, but it definitely isn't a backup in the sense that if it gets stolen or your house burns down or something detrimental happens, maybe you're hit with a hurricane, you definitely want an off-site storage location as well. So once you get this set up, the next thing that I need to do is figure out how I want to start backing up all of these files off-site, either through another NAS, maybe in Puerto Rico, and just have it upload automatically, or a complete off-site solution altogether where my files are just getting uploaded somewhere else. But it's incredibly important to make sure that you have your files backed up off-site too, because this is great to prevent any kind of hard drive failure, but it's not going to prevent anything from being lost if something happens to the unit itself. So fingers crossed we never have to deal with that, but you definitely want redundancy not only in your NAS box, but backing up the NAS box as well. So if you guys enjoy these kind of videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel below. Also head over to fstoppers.com for free daily content. And if you're a photographer and you want to enter our contest, we run a monthly contest. It's a different genre every single month. So depending on when you see this video, there's going to be a new contest running. We give away a lot of really cool prizes, everything from cameras to lenses, lighting gear, flashes, accessories, tripods, smoke machines, all kinds of cool stuff. And then if you subscribe to the Fstoppers YouTube channel, you can watch those videos every month when Lee and I will go through and critique the best images from the community. And finally, if you want to become a better photographer, head over to fstoppers.com/store where you can check out our full-length tutorials. We have really intense photography tutorials in everything from landscape photography, architecture, headshots, product photography, swimwear, fashion, macro photography. There's literally a tutorial for everybody. So if you want to start making money with your camera, definitely check those out. It looks like I still have about 16 hours before I can start using this drive. So I'm going to go take a break, but I will see you guys really soon.